Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of Virtual Sessions. Back before the Christmas break to get some more stories, ideas, and industry updates for adaptive mountain biking. Tonight we have Cullen Robinson of New England Disabled Sports and Felicia Fowler of Vermont Adaptive. They're here to chat about aMTB in the Northeast, the work that they've been doing there, and where things are headed. Up next, we have Sally Stanier from Bowhead Corp, and she will be introducing us to the brand new Rogue, which you see behind her there. If we've got her on the screen. There we go. And finally, Jim Beck will round out the night with his tips and tricks for cold weather riding. First of all, I just want to give a shout out to sponsors this year as we round out our season. Our work never ends in adaptive mountain biking, even if we're not on the trails right now. Busy developing, looking to next year events and all sorts of other fun stuff. So thank you to Bowheads to supporting our events this year. 661 has been a protection sponsor for our programming for a number of years now. Fox and Raceface have been outfitting our guides and instructors for the last year, and that's been a really big help for us. 7 Mesh out of Squamish, BC keeps us dry throughout the season, because that is a problem here in BC. BC Parks, Live Display Sports through Norco, Cliff Bar, High Fives, Can't Quit, Cartel. If you're unsure or don't have any relations with Can't Quit, Steve is an awesome guy, a member of the community, and great to support him. Whistle Performance Lubes, Red Bull Canada, and Vetter Mountain Bike Co. round out that list. So just to give a quick update from the Kootenay Adaptive front. The safety committee, I'm not sure if you saw that on social media, but we put out a call for safety committee. It's been a big thing that we've been pushed to do this year through Cycling Canada, event organizers, as well as through instruction bodies. There's still a ton to learn, even though we spent a few years developing instructor pathways with the bike instructor certification program. There's still just a ton to learn and a ton that we can continue to do better. So through the Canadian Adaptive Mountain Bike Association, we struck up a safety committee, got the terms of reference sorted, and we're just reaching out to some interested parties so we can get the work done this year. Some of which will be research project based on injury prevention in adaptive mountain biking. So that is, a safety committee isn't a super fun headline, but it's going to have pretty far-reaching impact, I think, for the community. So I'm really excited for that. Looking forward to our winter projects this year. The CASA trail guidelines are going to get a facelift. That's in large part to do with Whistler Bike Park adopting the standards this year and possibly going down to other Vail resorts. And we're seeing it pop up in other resorts as well, that we realized that we needed to trim some of the fat and make it more digestible for people to understand and adopt these guidelines. As mentioned, BICP, course bookings are getting out of control this year. That is a fantastic thing. We've got 2 courses in Australia, possibly 1 in Europe, and I'm losing track of the ones in the United States and Canada so far. This is all great things, but right now there are very, very few instructor trainers for adaptive mountain biking, even though we're working to add some more to the list. So capacity is a little tight. So if your organization or other organizations that are interested in this training, the level 1 or the level 2, please reach out. I will leave an email in the link here or in the chat, and book sooner than later. in there. And last but not least, we launched Flow Arizona today. So we got to tease that last time 3 weeks ago and launched today. And I think, we don't do first come, first serve for the registration because we really want to make sure that that we can serve everyone that's registered or and then meet our capacity as well, because it's a little bit tricky sometimes with logistics and adaptive mountain biking. But I think within 45 minutes today, we had reached what our capacity would be. So that was a really quick sign up rate. And I'm just noticing more coming in now. So I will link that as well. If you or anyone would like to be a part of that event that is going on in Phoenix, Arizona from the 23rd to the 27th of March in next year. So I will set a link for that as well in chat in just a moment. So first up, we are going to have Cullen and Felicia chat about aMTB in the Northeast. So I will turn it over to them.
Felicia, do you want me to start? Okay.
Go for it.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Cullen Robinson. I'm the Senior Program Coordinator with New England Disabled Sports in Lincoln, New Hampshire on the East Coast. I'm currently wearing an orange top and a black sweatshirt for anyone with any kind of visual impairment. I'm going to start by introducing our organization. New England Disabled Sports is a year-round nonprofit adaptive sports program. We serve everyone, anyone of all abilities. We have skiing and snowboarding and Nordic skiing during the wintertime. And then summertime, we have road cycling, golf, kayaking, and now adaptive downhill mountain biking. My first exposure to aMTB was actually in one of these chats. I just happened to see this pop up on my Instagram a few years ago, and here we are today. Ned is lucky enough to get a few grants from the Nielsen Foundation to kind of kickstart our program. Our first year, we were able to serve 10 athletes on two days worth of cycling. We did some cross country and some downhill right on our backyard. After that, our second summer, this is the second summer, we had served just around 60 lessons, around 20 unique individuals. So it was a pretty big, kickstart for our program through these two grants. We currently have 6 reactive adaptation bikes. We have 2 prone bikes and 2 hand cranks, and then 2 foot pedal bikes as well. And it seems like it's been relatively smooth sailing for us so far, but we have had to put in a little bit of work. We're in this kind of tricky position where Loon Mountain Resort is our home base. It's located on White Mountain National Forest. And we unfortunately had to kind of fight for access for adaptive mountain bikes to be on their downhill park with e-assist. So we had to get an operational exception thrown in there for the White Mountain National Forest, and we're able to program relatively with ease now. Our first year was kind of rough a little bit too. I think that we're kind of learning as we went. We had no certifications yet. We're just kind of trying our best to teach great lessons. And then this year, with the help of Mike, we were able to get a BICP certification. And we were able to host 10 individuals from across New England to come here and come to Loon and get some BICP certifications. And it was a really unique process for all of us, because I think that anyone in New England now, when they come to program with Vermont Adaptive, NEDS, or ASPNC, which is the Adaptive Sports Partners in North Country, or just north of us, they're all going to get the same kind of verbiage and the same instruction. And it's like a really unique thing that we all have going here right now. Kind of all I have. If anyone has any questions about NEDs, feel free to ask them in the chat. And Felicia, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Cullen. So my name is Felicia Fowler, and I'm currently the program manager for Vermont Adaptive Ski and Sports. We have kind of 3 sites across the state, one in southern Vermont, Pico in Killington Resort, and then I'm based at a Sugar Bush Resort. And then we have another location about an hour north in Burlington and Bolton area. Similar to Cullen's program at NEDS, we are a year-round nonprofit organization. Similar sports in the winter, ski, snowboard, Nordic, and hoping to dip our toes into some fat biking this winter. And then in the summer, mountain biking, road biking, paddle sports. And our mountain bike program's been around for about 5 years. The first couple of years were pretty small. We only had a couple bikes. And so, yeah, working through all sorts of pieces of adaptive mountain biking. We currently now have 6 bikes, and then I'm excited to work with Bowhead. We're getting potentially 2 Bowheads for this coming summer. So that's some kind of exciting news for us in Vermont. And then more specifically to Vermont, a lot of the trail networks in Vermont are on private land. Some of it's public land. So we've been working a lot with Vermont Mountain Bike Association, which they're an organization who run and work with a lot of trail networks across the state. So we've been working with VMBA to talk to them about trail accessibility, talk to them about universal trails, and then get their trail builders on some of these bikes to experience what they're like. And so that's been a really cool piece in Vermont. And then doing a lot of advocacy work alongside VMBA when they do have downhill days across the state. We're there right with them along with Pride Rides and working with people to increase awareness of adaptive mountain biking. Kind of where we're at now, we're just starting to get some e-assist bikes. So that's been an interesting transition is with working with trail networks, and especially private trail networks with e-assist bikes. We have 2 right now and a 3rd in the works. And then this year we also were able to host the US Open that was at Killington Resort, and we worked with the US Mountain Bike Open to host an adaptive category. We had 10 racers in that this year. We chose a tech trail, and we're hoping to build upon that in future years to grow it and make it more of a destination for everyone. I guess a little bit about me. I also got to take the BICP level 1 with Cullen at NEDS, and so I'll echo that as a lot of the programs in New England all were at that course. So we're teaching a lot of the same skills. But yeah, we're hoping to continue to grow and work with VMBA and other programs to grow mountain biking in New England. That's kind of what I had.
All right, thanks so much. I'm just going to leave it open for some questions people want to ask. I'll start with one here as well. So it's one thing I noticed when out there this year, seeing the trail networks in Vermont was quite interesting because we in BC are not really used to working with so many private landholders. So that was pretty incredible to see how those networks work, and that was awesome to see. And just working within the resort too. So I think the collaboration that you all have there in the Vermont area is incredible, but also with other organizations that you mentioned. Do you just want to give us a heads up? Because there's a bunch of organizations that work together in that area. I'm just wondering if you're able to just list a few for people.
Yeah, so in Vermont, we work pretty closely with the Kelly Brush Foundation there in the Burlington area, which is about an hour from us. So we have hosted alongside NEDS and Adaptive Sport Partners of the North Country a mountain bike camp up at Kingdom Trails, which is the network that Mike was talking about with all the private land and access. And then other organizations, the High Fives Foundation is originally based in Sugarbush, but their offices are out in California, I believe now. And then where we received our bikes, we had a big grant from Move United to kind of kickstart our program.
Thanks. Yeah, it's great to see the collaboration out in the Northeast. I don't know if that is, unique to your area, but it was great to see how everyone works together, including all the other nonprofits that run programming as well. Because I believe there was quite a few out there when I was visiting. Does anyone have any questions for Cullen or Felicia?
I could ask a question from a manufacturer's point of view. I'm curious, I've talked to lots of programs like CASA and RMA, but just what like the biggest hurdles are day to day, and if you have any feedback like directly to a manufacturer about like whether it's maintenance or how-to videos or anything like that, or even funding, what's like the biggest headache if you could have somebody change something? And that's to either of you, if any of you have any thoughts.
My guess is we have the same answer, and it's probably going to be around maintenance. And
absolutely, yeah, 100%. I think like one of the things that we spent a lot of time doing with NEDS is finding bike shops that we can work with that understand that these are just regular bikes with parts in different places, not necessarily in your traditional spot. I think that maintenance bit is really, very difficult. Sometimes I feel like I'm changing tires and tubes like every lap, and some days it just feels like it's, the bike is indestructible. There's no like rhyme or reason as to why things happen. They just kind of happen.
Okay.
Yep.
Good
I
to know.
agree.
But how-to videos, that kind of stuff is always super helpful, because there's no like, a lot of times these bikes don't come with manuals, and you just kind of have to figure things out as we go, and figuring things out sometimes leads to breaking stuff. So that costs money.
Cool. Well, thank you for the feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Okay. Hey guys, Chelsea from Ottawa. I'm curious about the outreach you guys had to do to get your sort of initial wave of participants. Were there a lot of folks who you'd either connected with through the ski community or in other avenues who already knew about adaptive mountain biking, or did you have to sort of publicize what it was and get the word out that way?
Yeah, I think there are a couple different avenues when we first started. One was using who we had here, and as well as a lot of the local organizations. I mean, we also work with the Spalding Rehab Hospital, which is in Boston. And then we kind of just started like a 3-week series of, hey, come on out. Part of that grant we got was we were able to provide free programs for that.
Oh,
so
cool.
that helped, and kind of
like clinic days, or people could come try it?
Yeah, come see them, try it. Definitely.
Yeah, I think kind of the same with Felicia. We don't have a super close connection with like a hospital like Vermont Adaptive does, but the free, like both of our grants for the first 2 summers that we had allowed us to program with that free of charge, which was super helpful. And then a lot of Instagram outreach and a lot of Instagram posting. I kind of followed the lead with Mike on that for a while. That was like pretty helpful. We did get a couple people that reached out through Instagram, and word of mouth. I mean, I think that always helped as well.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, guys.
Go ahead, Jim.
I was wondering if your organizations have like a shared strategic advocacy agenda or a policy development agenda. If you have next steps kind of figured out in terms of that combined with sport development.
Can you I don't understand. I didn't understand the question. Can you kind of explain it? I don't know how to answer that.
So I think, Cullen, you noted that you had to work with Forest Service and some other land managers around e-assist. I guess I'm just wondering, are there other advocacy items that are part of a shared agenda that your organizations share? Or are you all kind of working in different directions at the local level around advocacy and or policy development? Yeah, so is it coordinated? Do you see where you're headed over the horizon in terms of policy and advocacy?
I think,
I can jump.
Yeah, go for it, Felicia. Yeah.
All right. I was just going to say, from Vermont's perspective, working with Vermont Mountain Bike Association has been huge because they have those relationships and connections to the state and local government organizations, as well as those private landowners. And for us, the advocacy piece has kind of been working with those. I think there's 50 or 60 trail networks, and just bringing them knowledge and info that they may not know about. So kind of starting on that baseline level of what is adaptive mountain biking, and here are these bikes and how they work and what they look like.
Yeah, I think for us it's kind of the same route. I would say in that sense, Felicia's and my paths don't really cross a whole lot because they're just separate organizations all across New Hampshire and Vermont. But for us, working with the National Forest and working with the mountain to make sure that all of our trails, when they're building, are accessible, because it's a relatively new bike park. So giving them some kind of standard to work with from the beginning was helpful for us. And then just kind of whenever we go to different bike parks, just explaining what we do. We're starting to do some work with Highland Bike Park. Hopefully next time when they start to develop some trail networks for cross country and they want their trails to be a little bit more accessible. So we went down there this year to kind of have a demo day with their trail crew, and it was pretty successful.
Thanks.
All right, thanks you two. Great to hear from you what's going on Northeast. I always try to fill that in myself, but it's always great to hear it from the people doing the work. So thanks for everything you do out there, and I hope we'll be seeing you guys this spring again. That was a mild hint. But we might be coming out that way anyways for some training. And speaking of which, I just posted a few of the confirmed locations that we've got nailed down right now. There's a whole bunch more coming out. So Seattle, Snowshoe, West Virginia, Duluth, Minnesota, and Phoenix, Arizona coming up. So next up we have Sally Stanier of Bowhead, and she will be here to speak about the Rogue. So take it away, Sally.
Hello, my name's Sally. I'm community relations manager here at Bowhead. I also help with customer service and events and races and our sport development team. We're a small team, so you get to wear a lot of hats, which keeps things interesting and I love. So yeah, I'll be talking about the Rogue, but to start things off, I want to tell everyone some fun news because I saw Jen's on this call. So yeah, I don't know if you all saw, but we were doing a giveaway recently with Arc'teryx, and it was 2 jackets and a trailside toolkit to celebrate us getting to 15,000 followers on Instagram. And Jen won, which is awesome, but that's not the news. Jen then was so excited, and then later on that day reached out and said, hey, I'd like to give back to these programs because they do so much good stuff. So she decided to donate 1 to RMA and 1 to CASA. So Mike, you'll be getting an awesome Arc'teryx jacket that you can then auction off and help your programs. So yeah, to Felicia and Cullen and Mike and even Chelsea and Sierra and Annika, like everyone on this call who is involved in those programs, and is starting off their own thing where you're from, it's just cool because it shows how much of an impact these programs can have on people. And Jen was at Flow, and then she went and got her own Bowhead Reach. So just a really cool thing. And Jen, kudos. I love it. So congrats, or kudos to Jen. Moving on to the Rogue, which is here behind me. I'm using a Bowhead RX as my computer stand, which is actually getting shipped off to a woman in France, funny enough. So yeah, I'm happy to be here talking about the Rogue, but I need to give a good shout out to our engineering team. They've been working so hard on this bike, and it's a work of art. And also for Christian and Dean with the vision and just trying to make aMTB more accessible. It's really cool to be a part of and to see. So I'll walk you through the bike, give you a bit of a tour, and then you guys can ask all the questions you want, and I'll try my best to answer them. So at the back here, we designed a push rod suspension system. So what's really cool about that is each wheel has its own independent suspension. So even though it doesn't articulate in the same way that the Reach and RX does, it's still going to have that independent feel, and those wheels are going to stay like good contact on the ground and just make that a nice soft ride for all those bumpy trails. Another nice thing while you're riding this bike, although it has suspension, when you're riding it along a pathway, it's so efficient, you really don't feel any of that like lag or anything. So it's so much fun to ride. I hope you all get a chance to ride one day. Moving on to the wheels. Right now it'll be 27.5 wheels for the first edition, and then we will be coming out eventually with a kids bike, which will be 20 or 24-inch wheels. For brakes, it'll be similar to what the Reach and RX has. Like you can have a base brake, which on the initial model will be MT Sport, and then upgrade MT5, MT7, and so on. Frame as well, very similar to the Reach and RX. Stainless steel as a base, titanium upgrade. And another very cool feature is the dropper post. The seat is slightly different than the Reach or RX. It's really easy to transfer in and out of. And depending on if you want to be a little more leaned back or a little more in like a power position, there's a dropper post right here. So you can be forward or lean it all the way back, which is a very cool feature. The dropper post is an upgrade. The base will have just a standard like adjustable seat post. Moving on to the seat area, similar cushion to the Reach and RX, or same cushion on this model. And then the same motor, battery, and computer system as what the RX has. So it's the Bosch Performance Line CX motor. And then it has crazy good range because you have one battery on this side and one battery on the other side of the bike, which is really cool. As Jim knows, Jim's an RX rider and has gone on some crazy long rides in Alaska, which is always cool to see. The Kiox computer is very cool. It has all the different settings. You can scroll through with your left hand, just click through the different power modes so you can see like your output, your trip distance, everything like that. You can also connect this to an app on your phone and put like maps in there and whatnot, which is really cool. So lots of data. And it has 4 modes, the Bosch system. So it goes from Eco, Tour, aMTB, and Turbo. So depending if you want like more of a workout, you can have it in a lower power mode, or if you're doing a way longer ride and you want better range, then you can have it in that lower mode and just go for a long time. And if you're, late for work, you can put it in Turbo, or if you're just out for a short ride and you want to have lots of fun. And so yeah, Turbo would be 340% of what you put into it. So 3.5 times your input. So yeah, very, very fun to ride. The cranks initially will be coming in one length, 155, and then we will have a shorter crank option down the road for kids as well. Grips, we'll have a regular grip as a base and then ergon grips as the upgrade. The whole frame will be, you can shorten it very easily, similar to on the Reach and the RX. So if you're a smaller rider, shorter individual, you can slide that rear end forward, which is very handy. There will be, I kind of feel like a airplane attendant with the seatbelt, but there will be seatbelt options. So this is an option for the hips, and then we'll work with body point harnesses as well for folks with higher level of injuries or things like that to secure you in there. Motors up here. So I'll just pivot this a little bit so you can see the front end. So yeah, motor up here. And then as you crank, it gives that power to the front wheel. Front suspension as well. So it's very forgiving on all of those bumps. 27.5 wheel in the front as well. And then these are your footrests. Those can slide back and forth as well, depending on the height of the rider. For the drivetrain, it's same as the RX. We're using a SRAM drivetrain. For the base, we'll have a 10-speed with a cable shift. And then for the upgrade, you can get that wireless shifting with the SRAM axis derailleur and cassette, which is a 12-speed. So you also get those 2 extra speeds in the cassette as well, which is really cool. Yeah. Cable guiding system all up front. Let's see, what did I miss? Yeah, the assist levels. Torque, it's 40 to 85 Newton meters. So 85 Newton meters in that turbo mode. Another really cool thing about the software upgrade with the Bosch kiosk system is the aMTB mode has like a selective assistance. So let's say you're cruising along a fire road, it's going to be more in the tour mode. And then if you start going up a steep mountain bike climb, it'll read that you're putting more torque into it. So it'll kick into turbo mode and give you that extra assistance you need. So it's reading what you need, and that helps with battery capacity and just a really enjoyable ride. And then you can also focus on riding and not having to worry about flipping up into turbo mode. It'll just do it for you, which is very neat. Yeah, so that's kind of a general run through of the bike. I'll take this around and just kind of show you some close-ups. So yeah, the front drivetrain up here. This one has the 12-speed cassette on it. And then there's like what folks will be looking at while they're riding. The Bosch kiosk is on. And then this is your remote on the side. So you can go up into different power modes, all the way up into turbo there. And then to go side to side, those are your different screens. So that'll be like trip distance and everything like that. There's the seatbelt mounted on the other side there. And then for a close-up on the rear end, this is the push rod suspension I was mentioning. I don't think I'd be able to get it to engage right now, but when you're on the ground, it looks really cool. If you go over a big bump, each shock is working independently, so it makes for a really smooth ride. And then in terms of storage, there will be a trunk bag on the back, and we're coming up with a few other storage solutions, but that'll be an option coming down the line as well. So yeah, we're super excited about this bike. The whole idea behind it is just to make adaptive mountain biking more accessible to everyone. Price point is huge. It's $10,999, so significantly less than our other bikes, as well as the competitors for this style. And yeah, it's just super fun to ride, and hopefully, yeah, good for programs and all the folks out there who are looking to get outside.
Awesome. Thanks, Sally. Just want to confirm that was $10.99. That's US dollars.
US, yes, thank you.
Perfect. There's a question in comments asking if the kids version will come with the motor as well.
Yes, we've had some kids demo it. Went really well. With e-assist, it's a lot safer. You have to be pedaling for that motor to kick in. There will be, it sounds like there will be an option to have it without a motor, but we do really recommend it. It's just that much more fun. The moment you get to a little hill or anything like that, you don't have to worry about it. So yeah. And to confirm that $10,999 US is including the motor. So it'd be slightly less without the motor.
And I can confirm, as a big human, when I first saw it, I thought it looked a little small, but it was incredibly smooth to handle on technical terrain. So definitely enjoyed the ride. Does anyone else want to chime in with some questions? Now would be the time.
I have a question for you, Sally. How many of these are in the wild at this point that, like, I would love to try one? 0. Okay. I'd love to try one, but I don't have a Calgary trip in the immediate future. So
I can show you the 2 that exist as of right now. This is the first prototype here. It's been getting ridden a lot, so it's a little bit dirty. And then the second prototype, which is very, very similar to the full production model, is the one behind me. So we have a lot of pre-orders, but none out in the wild just yet.
Okay. When do you have like a rough idea when you'll be rolling those out? No pun intended.
Early in 2023. So we're getting parts in January and then building from there. So very soon.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Of course.
Hey, Sally, Phil Hasham over here. Can I jump in? Got a couple questions on this.
Of course.
Thanks so much for that thorough presentation. Appreciate it. Super cool bike. I ride a Lasher, so it's a Delta style. You know, so it's cool to see something available in a more affordable price point, and you know that also has full suspension, because as far as full suspension Deltas, there's really nothing else out there. So a couple questions on that. So I understand on the motor there's no throttle available, I think, on Bosch's. And would you be able to do an aftermarket upgrade on a throttle and potentially even get a bigger motor? What sort of options? I think it's a 250 watt torque sensitive rather than a cadence based. So anything on the motor option upgrades, throttle upgrade, and then also if you know what the clearance on the frame is when you're weighted on there, from the lowest point of the frame to the ground. Thank you.
Of course. So I'll do my best to answer a few of those, and I'm happy to chat with our team tomorrow and get back to you to confirm some of these answers. In terms of a bigger motor, as far as I know, we are working with Bosch for all of our e-assist models. So I'm not sure if we could get a bigger motor in that sense, but in terms of an extra one with the throttle, we have been looking at, and you can look up this system, it's called bimodal. So we've been looking at bimodal upgrades. It would be like a small throttle, and then it attaches, it's like an attachment onto your disc rotor, and that drives the wheel that way. So for folks who are interested in a throttle, that will potentially be an option. We're still kind of doing some testing and whatnot there. But yeah, we'll have more updates soon on that, I'd say. And then in terms of floor, when it's weighted, I'm happy to go sit in the first bike and kind of show you and do the best measurement I can. I don't have an exact measurement off the top of my head, but I can send a follow-up email as well to confirm all those things. But I'll go show you this one.
While you're doing that, just a second question in the comments there, is the price point going to be similar for the kids model?
Yes, we're gonna, so that there's the ground clearance, if that helps a little bit, but I can follow up with an exact measurement.
What's your width on that, by the way, on the rears?
Let me grab a tape measure. So wheel is, so outside of the wheel, or the tire to the other side on the outside, 31 inches.
Right on. Yeah, so I think you're a couple inches narrower than the Lasher, so that's cool.
And price point, I will have to confirm with our team if we will have it any lower for the kids bike. I think right now we were already trying our best to make it as affordable as we can. So I don't know if we can go much lower than that, but I'll send you an update if it is. But I believe it'll be priced the same. Any other questions or anything?
I was going to ask if there are different chainring options for gearing.
I believe we could do different chainring options right off the bat. We're sticking with the one option, and then we have the two different cassette options. So the 10 speed and then the 12 speed cassette.
Is it fat tire capable?
On the rear for sure, because there's so much clearance there, as you can see. On the front, I don't believe on the front, because there, as you can see,
Looks a little tight.
yeah, maybe plus size, but not a fat tire. Any other questions?
I know, I was going to say just about the throttle. I was really nervous going to the RX to give up a throttle and have never missed it. And
Yeah.
that completely surprised me. But the Bosch engages so differently than a Bafang system. It, in my opinion, often renders the throttle just, it's not necessary. And I was really surprised to find that to be the case, because I use the throttle all the time on my old bike to turn it around and stuff.
That's interesting to hear, because that's what we think as well. But I mean, we have a set number of people testing and riding our bikes at our own shop, but it's always really interesting to hear what our riders think. So that's good feedback and glad to hear.
All right. Thanks so much, Sally. I'll see if I can get some of those follow-up answers too, so we can put them on the recording afterwards so people can look those up. Thanks so much for sharing.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so we have Jim Beck up next. He's going to be chatting with us about cold weather riding tips, tricks, techniques. And just before he starts here, I'll link in one of our blog posts on tips for battery storage, because it is that time of year for us who are in cold weather, wrapping up the season. So give that a read, but also keeping in mind that these are just tips, tricks. Always refer to your manufacturer for exact specifications. Take it away, Jim.
Hey, Mike, is it possible to share my screen?
You bet. Just give me one moment here. Having a couple issues here on my back end. If you just want to start there, Jim, I'll get that going.
I think we got it. Are you looking at my title slide there? Let's not freeze in the dark.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
All right, cool. Hey, thanks everybody. I really appreciate being here. I want to watch the clock and not go long. Promise Mike I wouldn't do that. First, I wanted to say I am sitting here beaming to you from Otna, Athabascan country in Alaska. Maybe a little bit of Denina country as well, but where I live is river and mountain country, which just even helps to kind of bolster why it makes sense to ride bikes in the winter in this part of Alaska when rivers freeze up. So I want to also note that I don't believe that I do anything differently than a lot of other people who ride cycles in the winter. I don't probably have any super duper secrets. But I'll share a little bit about what I know just because I'm kind of nuts about it and I think it's amazing. Let's see if I can get this computer to work. So I felt like I needed to make at least like a 30-second case for why would you ride bikes in the cold. And I think part of it to me is why the heck not? I mean, look at that countryside. And in Alaska, and I think lots of other northern climes. And I will say this presentation is really slanted towards places in the north where we have winter. But I would suspect that winter riding is just as cool in Atlanta, Georgia, as it is in Palmer, Alaska. There's just really neat things to see. The universe looks completely different in the winter. And I think it's just so much fun to get out in it in that regard. This particular picture, that little creek becomes an accessible place to ride in the winter. And that's one of the things I love about winter riding, not only for the waterways that freeze that you can ride on, but also groom trails. So if you're sort of into the fat bike scene where they groom trails, those trails actually become more and more accessible as the winter rolls on, as the groomers fill in low spots and carve off the high spots, which is really neat. So you've got trails that actually become more and more rideable theoretically throughout the winter season. And I think it's fantastic for racing. Racing is lots of fun in the winter. It's a great way to keep conditioning, nothing against skiing, also a great way to condition. But man, it's nice to come into the spring with a heck of a lot of miles under your belt, having ridden all winter. And certainly in Alaska and in other frozen places in the north, our rivers are highways and our lakes are racetracks. And the riding in that regard is just honestly endless. And I think of places like Minnesota and Michigan, the riding in the winter there has got to be phenomenal. And I would suspect the same for BC and other really cool winter places. So that's a little bit about some of the why. But you look at a video like this and think, why on earth would you not want to fly through the woods in the snow on a three-wheel bike? And I think it's one of the cool things about hand biking is having 3 points of contact on the ground gives us a bit of a leg up in some regards when it comes to two-wheel fat bikes, who can be pitching off the trail left and right, and there you are on your hand bike, just straight as an arrow flying through. So it's such a cool thing. So where might you ride if you're riding in the winter? Like I said, one of the things that I really got turned on to last winter was racing in the winter. And the neat thing about this is, particularly this race and a couple others are in Anchorage on paved bike trails. So they groom those trails in the winter for cross-country skiing. They lay classic tracks, and then they have a skate ski side of the trail. And that skate ski side of the trail that's groomed is just fantastic for riding bikes all year long. So this is a really fun race that I was able to race in last January, that can't wait to race again this year. Didn't take too much specialty in terms of the bike, and I'll go into the bike in a minute, but just some other kind of places that you can ride, and not just in Alaska, but probably everywhere. This is Kootenay Glacier, which is, it's about a half hour from my house. The really cool thing about Kootenay Glacier is you get to see stuff like this. It's just an incredible landscape that when you're there, your eyes, you can't believe what your eyes are seeing because your eyes have never seen stuff like this. And what is, I think, also really, truly unique about these types of places is how accessible that they can be. So this is a network of sloughs and creeks that are also here in South Central Alaska that literally probably go forever. And every now and then we get the kind of conditions here in our winter where we don't have a ton of snow. I would say this is not the case the last 2 winters. We're setting records for snow. Actually tonight, as we speak, we're going to set another December record. This was a couple winters ago. And what you're looking at really is ice skating tracks because we hadn't gotten any snow for so long, but everything was frozen. And it's just a go forever. It's just such an amazing feeling of freedom. And I know a lot of us will always say this about riding hand cycles in particular. It's such a feeling of freedom. To me, this just really amplifies it, to be able to get on frozen surfaces, beautiful, flat, incredible riding, and just see where some of these places take you. This is back to Kootenay Glacier. It's actually one of the largest glaciers in all of Alaska. And it's so close to South Central Alaska. It's really a fairly heavily trafficked fat bike area. It's not a terribly difficult ride. Something I'm really interested and exciting about this ride is, like, look at this trail. You could push a wheelchair on that trail, frankly. It gets so packed. And this is just shooting down the main stem of the Kootenay River, which gets you to the Kootenay Glacier eventually. But what I love is it's such a non-technical trail. It's about a 10-mile trail into the glacier, and then there's a lake in front of the glacier that you can dink around and mess about, and really enjoy yourself and kind of go anywhere you want to go. And then you've got about a 10-mile ride back. So I've seen that ride go anywhere from about 20 to 30 miles, depending on how much messing about you want to do. So those are just some examples that are local to me. But I know, really, if we surveyed every state in the United States or provinces in Canada, we would find also just super cool, amazing places to ride in the winter, often that I think we don't even think about as places to ride in the winter. I'm also really fond of urban riding in the winter, whether it's on a paved bike trail or in neighborhood streets or just streets in general, because again, it just sort of reshuffles the deck and takes maybe some sort of asphalt bike trails that you've become bored with and turn them into something a bit more challenging once they've got some snowpack on them. So I want to talk a little bit about how you stay warm. I'm not putting this picture of me up there because I think I look cool. I actually think I look frozen and old. But I'm about to sort of unpack this system that I'm wearing. This was a ride a few weeks ago at 4 degrees. Fahrenheit was about minus 15 centigrade. So not really that cold. And it's funny, I don't know if anybody knows Neil Russell from Scotland, but he posts on Instagram a lot. He used to be handbike packing. He's Handbike Adventures now. And Neil was like, oh, I saw you were going to do this talk. We just went riding, probably nowhere near as cold as you. He said it was minus 15 centigrade. We went riding. And I'm like, wow, Neil, that's about as cold as I ride, man. I'm, maybe 0 Fahrenheit, but 5, 10 degrees Fahrenheit is pretty nice and low for me. So I don't tend to ride much colder than that. It's really highly possible to stay warm when you're riding, and it's honestly, and this is ancient settled technology about how to dress in layers in an active sport. So this is nothing new, but really it's about controlling moisture and not getting deathly wet. And do not let a piece of cotton touch your body when you're out in the winter. And never, ever, ever would I put a piece of down, feather, anything on my body in the winter. So I start with the helmet. And if you're going to forget any one thing, don't let it be a buff. That's just a neck buff that goes underneath my helmet. I prefer different levels of beanies depending on how cold it is. We're in the part of the winter where I'm on the blue beanie on the left. If I'm down to 0 or less, it's a Pearl Izumi balaclava on the right. And if that thing won't keep you warm under your helmet, then you should definitely stay home. Fantastic piece of equipment, but really highly able to keep warm from the head down. And so I layer from there, just, pretty much like anybody else does who spends time in the winter. I rely on that black Patagonia shell in the middle, just as a shell layer. The circle there is to say, man, this thing has pit zips. I'm addicted to pit zips. I would never have a winter shell that doesn't have pit zips because, again, it's all about controlling moisture and ventilating the layers that you have on to stay warm and comfortable. And I'll reiterate, if you can't stay warm and comfortable, it's not worth going. And if I can't be warm and comfortable, I'd way rather stay home on the couch. But so I layer underneath my black shell. more synthetic layers. On the left, I have this nano puff. It looks like a down coat, but it's not. And I have this other vest that's a synthetic vest that just lets everything wick through to that Patagonia so that I can stay warm. I actually prefer summer tech t-shirts underneath all of that, the two gray here in the middle. They're actually designed to keep you cool, which is sort of counterintuitive, but if I've got all of these insulating layers on and I'm pedaling a bike, so I'm generating a lot of heat, I'd like the layers next to my skin working to try to keep me cool. I prefer a gauntlet kind of glove with a removable liner. I don't really go into gloves and boots in this presentation because that's a whole other presentation, and fist fights break out when you start talking about gloves and boots sometimes with people because it's such personal decisions. Let's see. So then I love my kind of alpine tech pants. These are actually ice climbing pants, but I have a couple pants that are outfitted the same way. What I really like to advocate for when it comes to any riding, and I know I'm not the only person who discovered this, it's probably old hat to people with more experience cycling than me, but the top circle is suspenders. So I've been spinal cord injured for 40 years, which means I've been trying to keep my pants on my butt for 40 years, which is why I love suspenders, because I don't have to worry about my pants falling off my butt when I'm in my bike. They stay put, which is beautiful. And then I really like to clamp down on the other end at the bottom of the screen. The circle are just really simple shock cord stirrups. These pants actually come with grommets set up, but I have a couple other pants that I've put grommets in and put shock cords in. What I noticed over the years of hand cycling is that your pant legs slowly start to creep up your legs until one day you look down and all of a sudden your socks are covered in mud and grime and dirt and gravel and grit, and your cuffs of your pants are right below your knees. So I do the shock cord situation, and now my pants are clamped to my feet. So if it's raining, cool, I'm dry, I'm not getting rain inside of my shoes. If it's muddy, gravelly, whatever, it all stays out. And it was fun about this post that I saw from Neil from Scotland. He's got a pair of gaiters on the bottom of his pants, and I had to write him back and say, Neil, I'm gonna mention that because between stirrups or gaiters, it's just a really basic piece of riding tech for me, is to have pants that clamp at the top and clamp at the bottom and kind of keep me all situated in the middle. So that's sort of a fast exploration of the layering system. And I'll go back to this old man picture of me only to say on the left here, the system works. And I'll never forget that day because my son was here and he was yelling at me when I got home because the inside of my Gore-Tex was completely soaking wet. My next layer, sorry, I lost my earbud. My next layer in was that nano puff jacket, completely soaking wet, completely. But then from here in, I have the vest on, totally dry. I have two tech t-shirts on, totally dry. I was as warm and toasty and dry as a human being could possibly be, especially given that my outer two layers were completely soaked. I failed to deploy my pit zips was one of my issues, but I was still really, really warm. The other couple things I'll note really quickly, if you live in the north and you're going to ride in the winter, you're going to ride in the dark a lot. So I have kind of a fetish collection of headlamps because I also like to see where I'm going. So it's a really vital part of any kit for riding in the north in the winter is headlamp. A lot of argument about goggles versus glasses. I kind of split the difference. I wear prescription spectacles, so goggles are really a hassle for me despite over the goggles or over the glasses goggles. Smith makes a couple different kinds of glasses that you can get that you can insert a prescription lens in, which I absolutely adore these glasses. So it gives me a little bit more protection than just my regular glasses, but I get the benefit of prescriptions as well. And it's not a big bulky thing like goggles. I have found when it's cold that having that little bit of extra side protection on the side that the glasses, these Smith sunglasses provide is really useful when it comes to staying warm. And I think the only other thing I'll point out on this right side picture is this system allows me to get covered with snow, but again, not get cold or not necessarily even get wet, which is a fabulous thing. I got a couple more slides and I will wrap it up. Wanted to talk just a little bit about bikes, because it's a pretty common question when I talk to people about this, is like, well, what kind of bike do I need? Do I have to have a fat bike? Should I stud my bike up? What kind of ground clearance do I need? The picture on the left is what super duper sold me on studding all 3 tires of my bike. I know, for instance, I think when I talked to Christian a year or 2 ago, he doesn't stud the front of his RX, just the back for traction. But what I found in a situation like this, where I'm on the river, it's a side slope, I'm freaking out. My riding partners are standing up behind me. They're definitely freaking out watching me, because to my right is open water and to the left is kind of an impassable rock field. And I'm just really desperate that those studs are going to hold me up until I can get about 30, 40 feet forward in that frame and take a left up into the rock field. So that was the first winter that I rode up here, and absolutely 100% said, yes, if you're going to ride a hand bike up here and you're going to be on ice, you should definitely stud all of your tires, which are easily, for us at least, they're easy to come by at the local bike shop. You can see in that picture, I don't have fat tires on the bike at that point. I think the next winter I put a fat drive tire on, but you get such good flotation with 3 points of tire on the ground. I don't feel that fat tire is always critical. The last couple winters with as much snow as we have had, I would say they're more critical than they were, for instance, this winter, which was not a super snowy winter. But again, I'm really sold on studding when it comes to this kind of riding. So then this year I have the RX, and I was really intrigued about what I could do to make it a winter bike and how I would use it and where I would use it. And I think this video will play. Can you all hear that?
I can't hear.
Sorry about that. Let me just do a quick explainer on that. Can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, we gotcha.
Okay, cool. So what I did with the RX here was I studded this outer row of lugs on the tires. I put some Maxxis Minion DHF tires on the front, which isn't what the bike came with, but I wanted a bit more aggressive tread. And if you ride an RX, you know that one of the parts of its design, why it can turn so sharp, is because the tires will also come into contact with your clothing. And so I didn't necessarily want to put a row of studs in the inside of the tire, because wherever those studs contact your clothing, it basically just rips it to shreds. So for now, I have the outside row of lugs studded with a product called grip studs, which are really cool. You can just, they just basically screw into the lug on the tire. Then on the back of the RX, I have a Schwalbe Ice Biker Pro, which almost looks like a buzz saw. That you could probably cut a tree down with that tire. The studs are so big on it. So thus far in my experiments with the RX, it's going to be a really decent winter bike. It's definitely stopping with the depth of snow that we have, but if I want to go knock off 15 miles in the neighborhood, and it's icy and snowy and nasty, I know that I can count on this bike. I did find that when I articulate left or right, that outside lug of studs does catch pretty well, which is cool. So I think the theory was reasonably correct. If I were going to ride it a lot more on ice, if we had that kind of winter with not a lot of snow, but definitely a lot of ice, I would probably stud the next layer of lugs in. And and risk my clothing a little more, but just trying to get a little more steel stud on the ground than what I've got. But so far, I'm really excited about how the Bowhead is going to go in that regard. And I would just say thank you. If you've got any questions, love to entertain them. Anything at all. Thanks.
Hey Jim, thanks for that presentation. It's this is Phil, by the way. So I'm going to be doing some snow biking for the first time here in a couple weeks. So this is actually quite timely. And what you're talking about was studding. So on the Lasher, being a front wheel drive, I got a 27.5 3.8 up in the front. So it's rather fat. It's a Minion. Pretty good knobs on there. So with the studding, so I basically want two sets of tires, it sounds like, right? So ones would be studded, ones wouldn't, I would assume, because you can't really take them off, I'm assuming, and go back to stock. So I guess, and then that makes sense. You answered the question on the rears, right? For situations like camber or anything like that, you want to have a little bit more traction. So you're not sliding those rears back, it sounds like. Now, with doing just the front 3.8, you think that's going to be enough traction being a front wheel drive in snow with studs versus just going with a fat bike tire? And I believe I can't really go much bigger than that anyway, because then you're going to have fork clearance issues anyways on the Lasher. So if you could talk a little bit about the traction on the front wheel drive on that.
Yeah, it's such a good question, Phil, and it kind of depends where you're riding and how much ice you think you're going to run into. I have a 3.8 Narwhal on this bike that I just showed in this last video. And I'm left sometimes wishing I had a wider tire. I actually had to have them build a set of fat tire fork for that bike. It didn't come with that capability like a Lasher does. If I knew I wasn't going to be in ice a lot, I probably wouldn't worry as much about studding, to be honest. I would try to drag that through the snow and see how it goes. I think much more important in a lot of conditions than whether you've got studs is messing with tire pressure. And it's one of the mentally exhausting things about fat biking and winter biking is it's so condition dependent. It's just mentally exhausting. And if you don't have your tire pressure quite right, you're going to be messing with that. And that's a hassle for us to get on off our bikes and mess with tire pressure. So I don't know, Phil, I guess I'd be tempted to try without, perhaps. I like you said, I do have two sets. I've gone tubeless up front, so I'll throw the studs on for the season, front and back. The backs, it's those rare situations where I'm going to be happy that I have studs on the back tires. But otherwise, you're really just dragging those things through the snow, and having studs on them doesn't necessarily help. But I think having fat tires on the back and really managing your tire pressure and keeping it as low as possible probably will serve you better than studs anyway. But again, as Mike noted, depending on the conditions, of course. Does that help?
Yeah. So you'd give it a run just stock first, and then kind of see where it goes, and then see if needs studs, then maybe you just go with the front tire. Because you can't really get anything fatter than that on a Lasher anyway, right? So if I were to get a backup tire, it'd be like the same tire and just stud the front, see how it goes with the front. And then if I need to stud the backs, do that. But you'd say start out just stock, see how we do on traction, and then go from that. I'm going to be doing some like snow trails and some ice lakes as well. So just for reference.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're on the ice, then you might be wishing you had studs for sure. It just really depends how much snow is going to be on the ice. The picture that I showed at the very end with that little skid, it's kind of rare condition that lake in front of the glacier doesn't have any snow on it. And so without snow and you've got that glare ice, it's a little tricky, especially in a Delta bike. It's embarrassing, of course, when you get stuck and there's nothing around but just ice. And with the studs, you're much less likely to have that happen. So for sure, if you think you're going to be in ice, I'd probably stud the drive tire at least. But again, if it's just a snowy winter and you may not be in ice, you probably get away without it, and just manage through tire pressure and trying to keep a good contact patch on the snow.
Got it. Thanks, Jim.
You bet.
I'm just going to jump in with a quick sponsor plug through 7Mesh. Notice you talking about suspenders. We're lucky enough with the team to have the 7Mesh Thunder Pant, which is an incredible thing to have, especially if you are in wet areas. The nice thing about their specific brand of clothing is it's designed specifically for cycling, so reach, overreach, and movement. So the pants are curved and go up towards the back and are lower in the front, and the jackets go more over the butt, so that there's not nearly as much creep in that style of clothing. Talking about tire pressure, that's the fun one. Something I want to put out there too, like I mentioned in chat, was everything's the rule until it's not the rule in adaptive mountain biking. There's very little that's set in stone. But one thing that we noticed when we were working with tire pressure, it got us through most of it. We don't stud anything, based on what we do in the winter. For us, it's just easy enough just to drop some tire pressure. But keeping in mind, if you're going to be playing with that, the easiest way to do that is making sure that you have a tubeless setup, because once you drop tire pressure with the tube in, you have a really high chance of popping that tube. So if that's an option for you, we highly suggest going tubeless, but we highly suggest going tubeless on the front tire anyways.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that, Mike? Sorry, Jim, I also have a question for you after. So, Mike, what about tire armor? If you're running with tubes, would that suffice, do you think? Or would that still cause an issue depending on how low you lower it?
I think tubes in general are just an issue, especially on adaptive bikes, because some of the pressures exhibited on like the sidewall are higher, and like the side tension that they have to deal with, but also in the power. So if there's tube slip on your rim, you can really easily just puncture where that connection is to the inflation tube. So highly suggest if you're going to be playing with tire pressure, just go tubeless. You'll save yourself a lot of hassle.
Yeah, and I've seen the effects of flats on the trail with adaptive mountain bikes, and it's way more of a hassle. So good tip.
When I did put some Tannis armor on my CX or my RX this fall when I went to those Maxxis Minion DHF tires. I wasn't having issues with flats, but I was having some commitment issues when it came to like smashing into big rocks and roots.
Right. Yeah.
The 20-inch tires kind of freaked me out. And again, I
For
hadn't had any problems, but so I did put the Tannis armor in there, and I'm really psyched about it. Like I can let air out of those tires to where I'm getting a wrinkle in the sidewall in that mountain bike tire, which I know it kind of blows my mind, and it still holds air. And this is when it was starting to get icy. I wasn't studded up yet, but I was noticing, well, A, my bike was really hard to ride because the tires were so low, but B, man, was I getting some really good traction. So it's not a tubeless setup, but wow, I'm going to absolutely run that year round in the RX for sure.
Okay. Yeah, no, good to know. I have the Tannis set up as well for mine. The other question I have for you, Jim, it sounds like a lot of your riding is on very hard packed snow, whether it's groomed for fat bikes or just, the end of the season after a snowfall, whatever it is, or rivers. Around where I am, a lot of the trails end up with softer snow. And I found last winter, my front end would really sink in after a couple of inches of fresh snow, and it was kind of impassable. I don't know if you have any tricks for that, or Sally from Bowhead, like if there's anything I can maybe do to help with that, or if it's just a matter of avoiding those spots and trying to find harder packed areas.
Go ahead, Sally.
I was gonna say either studded tires, lower pressure, or it's a little bit more money, but the all-wheel drive system, having the throttle on the front wheels really prevents you from diving if you are going to be riding in winter and in deep snow. And that's an option on the Reach.
Yeah, that whole part of it is really a heartbreak. And frankly, snow biking and fat biking is a terrible choice in some ways for paralyzed people. Like if I'm riding with able-bodied people and most of them are off their bikes pushing, I know I'm about to be in a lot of trouble and I'm not going to get where I want to go.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like even my neighborhood, I can access probably 40-mile trail network, but I cannot ascend the first hill to get out of the neighborhood into the woods.
Right.
It's just, it's terrible. So I like thrown myself out of my bike and drag myself and my bike up the hill and then struggle to get back on my bike. And by then I'm just beat to death.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. So if you have another option.
No, I think like when you listed the option of find a different place, that's kind of where I'm heading after a few winters of doing this. Yeah, it's a terrible sport for paralyzed people, but I love it and I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah, no, I fully appreciate that. There's so many trails around my place I would love to ride year round, but my issue is just that there isn't enough able-bodied traffic, and so they don't get packed down enough, and my front end digs in, and then the back tire is spinning out. Like it doesn't work. So
yeah,
but the rivers is a good idea. I'd never thought about trying to ride on ice. And
frozen lakes are super fun if you have any around.
Yeah, and I live where the world's longest skating rink exists. If it gets cold enough, so yeah, there's options there. If I were to think about going on ice, I don't have studs, and I mostly didn't do it because of, as you mentioned, like the tires hitting your clothes and hitting your skin. So I definitely picked up when you mentioned Sierra. Yes, I would love to move to the island one day. Find me an accessible house that I can afford. I'll be there. But when you mentioned putting studs just on the outside, that's really helpful, and I think something I will look into. Because where I am, it's just not ideal for winter biking, and winter is like 6 months of the year. So it'd be nice to be able to access that.
Sounds like we reached the same conclusion for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
You bet.
I have 2 quick questions if we're not too tight for time. First, thank you for sharing. It's always cool to hear folks inspire others and get set up for getting outside more often. First question, when can we come visit? The glaciers look incredible. And second, the race that you talked about, if we can get an adaptive category going up there and you can help us get a bunch of our X's racing around there, it looks amazing. So count us in.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, great. Quick questions.
All right.
Hey, Jim.
Thank you so much, Jim. Was that you, Phil? We'll just do one last question and then we'll wrap it up for this evening.
Hey, this is Chris Orr. This might be a long question. Something that I'm unfamiliar with in winter sports, and if it's a whole nother presentation, we can shelve it for another time. How do you monitor and protect limbs that you might not be able to feel? Is there a summary for that?
I think that's such an individualized question. Like I've been hurt for 40 years, so I know what I can get away with. I know how bad I can freeze my feet without suffering permanent damage. And I do stuff now probably that I wouldn't have done 30 years ago before I knew my body and what it can handle. But it's a deal. I mean, it's easy to hurt yourself out there, either with frostbite or freezing a toe off or whatever. And I think all of us probably do it differently depending on your level of disability, what you can feel. Does it hurt when your feet get cold? sometimes that's the case. It just, boy, that's a tough question. I think it's so individualized, Chris.
Okay, well, thanks for giving the input.
Okay. Thanks so much, Jim. Feel like Tourism Alaska should be paying you for this one. I think we're all thinking the same thing. You come to visit, but I, for one, will be waiting for summertime. All right, so big
Hey, Mike,
thanks.
can I throw in a quick one real quick for Sally, if she's still here?
Sure. Yep.
Is Sally still in here? Oh, hey, Sally. You mentioned something really interesting. You could do all-wheel drive on, you said the RX?
So
Is
we
that a,
on the Reach, but it would be possible on the RX. It's basically the two front wheels would be converted and there would be a throttle connected. So we could connect one. We haven't done it yet, to be honest, on the RX, but funny enough, Christian and I today we're talking about wanting to do some and good timing for Jim's talk as well, but wanting to do more winter riding. And we thought it would be like a cool video opportunity to ride somewhere around here, get out in the mountains somewhere towards Assiniboine and have a few of our team members and maybe build a snow cave and make it like an overnight thing. And we were talking about various places we could go and whether he would ride his RX or his Reach. And then, yeah, he was saying in the winter, it's always like a studded tire, all-wheel drive system on the Reach. But then we were kind of like, wait a minute, we could have you still ride the RX because it's his favorite bike. He loves both, but like just the exercise component is so great about the RX. And then he mentioned like we could just put the all-wheel drive system on the front of the RX. So it's not like a sold product by Bowhead yet on the RX, but it is an option and something we could look into if there's demand for it, for sure.
is there any chance that I'd be able to get a standalone version of that to install on the Lasher?
Oh, that's a good question. What size wheels?
27.5s, probably going to 29s though, like 2.8s in the back, but you know, I'm flexible.
Okay. I'd have to talk with our build team and see because I know they currently build it on 20-inch wheels. But you know, anything's possible. So I'll get back to you on that one.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll stay in touch because I'm really interested, and I've been thinking of the all-wheel drive on the Lasher forever because of the, you know, the downsides, the front wheel drive climbing, right? So if there's any way you could do something like that, I've known about a Grin Technology system I've thought about with hubs, but is it hub driven, by the way, or what's the drive?
Yeah.
It's hub driven. Yeah. How would you protect those from like getting slashed from rocks and bashing them into the rocks on the sidewall? You have like a shield around them?
Personally ridden it too much or at all, to be honest. We've sent a few out to customers and then Christian has his set. But yeah, I'll see if I'll try to dig up some videos and stuff about the all-wheel drive system and see if I can send them your way. We haven't marketed it too much. It's just like an option that's on the order form. So yeah, I'll get some more info and follow up with Mike to send your way.
Awesome. Thanks.
Of course.
All right. So I'm going to shut down the recording here in just a couple of minutes. You're welcome to stay on and have just an informal chat for about, I'll leave it open for about 10-15 or so. But for now, thank you to our friends in the Northeast, Cullen and Felicia, Sally from Bowhead, and Jim for your time tonight. And we'll see everyone in the new year. Have a good night.